Stand by. Contact.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service members. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and on most social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism, good criticism. We got a special guest. I'll let her introduce herself here shortly. But again, follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts. And, you know, service members helping service past or present. It's important to me, it's important to all the guests that come on. I'll let her introduce herself because I can't introduce greatness. So here we go. Have at it. Quick spiel, background, where you're from, what you're doing now, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes here later.
Absolutely. So I appreciate it. First of all, I'm Alyssa Michelle. I am a prior Army artillery officer in, obviously, the Army. I'm originally from upstate New York, but I found myself in Central Texas. I just recently left corporate America. So for the last 5 years, I've been out since 2019, did a little reserve time after active duty. Wasn't my cup of tea. So went into, corporate America for 5 years, just recently left, and now I'm actually the marketing and media person for a veteran nonprofit called Warrior Rising. So I'm a single mom of one little boy. Connecting with veterans post-service now has filled my cup so much. So I absolutely love what I do right now.
Sounds amazing. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah.
Alyssa, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your service. Past or present doesn't matter. Everybody has a story to tell, big or small. I would just love to tell it. So thank you for coming on and taking the time out of your busy schedule because you're doing bigger and better things. And I'm just here, just trying to figure it out as we go day to day. So, let's get into it. I mean, how many years did you serve and what capacities, what billets did you hold in time of service?
Yep. So I was in active duty for 4 years, and then I did reserve for about a year. That's a whole nother part of the story. I don't know if we want to dive into that yet, but I started off. So my commissioning source was ROTC. I went upstate New York to a little place called Brockport that nobody knows about. That's where I commissioned from, and then I went straight to Fort Bragg, which was my first choice. I know people think I'm crazy, but I graduated number one in my class, but I wanted to be in the 82nd. So I did that for a little bit, and then I went to Fort Benning, where my son was born, and those are the two stations that I was at. So
nice. Fort Bragg, I deployed Army Air Force with Joint Task Force 310 out of there. Dope.
Awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Loved it.
Absolutely, yeah. Fort Bragg. I don't know. People don't like Fort Bragg, but I love it. SOCOM's over there. Everybody's over there. All the big secret squirrel stuff happens over there. So it's amazing. But again, sweet duty stations. Army artillery officer. That's great. Great. So you're still in the reserves. You didn't resign commission. You didn't get out completely.
So I'm technically in the inactive reserve. So I got out of the reserves after just a little bit. It's a lot to juggle with being a single parent. So I had to pick one road, hang the hat up.
Yeah, I talked to current active duty single parents, and the struggle is real. I can't imagine, staying in and making a full-time career. I have officers, appointed over me that are married active duty member to member and have kids, and that's even different type of struggle. But the struggle is real for both single parents and active duty member to member. Because who's taking care of the kids, to be honest, and
Exactly.
It sounds like you wanted to be a mother, and that is that you find joy in that. I'm assuming that's why you got out of the struggle. You can't juggle both, and you chose the good one. And in my opinion, anyways. But talk about Warrior Rising. I know that now that you're official. You're a veteran. You got the label going on there. What made you come back and serve the veteran community in the capacity you do now?
Yeah, so obviously in corporate, I learned a lot about business. I managed a plumbing supply house. So I dealt with a lot of contractors, plumbers, blue collar. A lot of hard work, still learned a lot, but I was missing something. And I know that's a very typical story of a lot of veterans is we have this sense of service, like we want to continue to serve. A lot of veteran-owned businesses, which I'll get into, have that need or desire to continue to serve their communities and families around them, which is what I think is so amazing about veterans in general. So how I got into Warrior Rising is networking, which is an incredible thing that you should be doing while in the service and out that I didn't start till too late because I didn't really understand what networking even was. Your network is your net worth. So I had met some people through social media because I opened up a social media account publicly when I exited the military, and I started doing fitness stuff and family stuff. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty lucrative. So I'd met some people that, I went to a Warrior Rising event about 2 years ago just as a guest. learned about what they did, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So what Warrior Rising does is they help veterans in entrepreneurship. Next month we head out to Detroit. We go to different, usually like 4 or 5 business showers a year, and we pick 10, of the cohort members, so veterans that have their businesses. They go through a rigorous process. There's hundreds of thousands of applicants. You have to go through the training, get coached up, mentored, all that stuff, and then 10 get selected to go to these to compete for a business grant, which is absolutely tax-free. So you're talking about $20,000 for your startup. So
Wow.
it's an incredible, incredible experience. So I networked, and they saw that I did. So the one guy, Ben, he had known me through social media for years, invited me to the event, and then all of a sudden, 2 years down the road, I'm already planning to leave corporate America and just like figure it out. And he was like, "Hey, we have an opening. We need a marketing person in media. You do social media. You do all these different things. Like, would you be willing to apply and interview?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And then here I am since February on this end, on the media side. I get to talk to all the veterans. I host mini podcasts, do all their marketing and things like that, which is really awesome. But that's how basically networking has what got me to this new position. It's absolutely wild because it's beyond my dreams. I can work from anywhere, and I'm like, this is insane. I didn't think that was possible.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't want to date myself, but when I was growing up, this wasn't telework wasn't. You
No.
needed to go 9 to 5, 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour shift to go make some money routinely every day, and that was the American dream, and that was what it is. And now it's completely different. There's a plethora of jobs that offer telework, to include even civilian GS positions, through the military. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And then now you can even just us doing this potentially can get us monetized, and it's just all the avenues of making money now are way different than it was back in the early 2000s, early 90s. And it's wild to think that we're here now, and you're doing this from home, and then at the leisure of your schedule, and you still get to be full-time mom and do those things, do all the good things, which is wild, man. Warrior Rising sounds like a good deal.
It is. So for veterans listening, if you're trying to start a business, because when you're exiting the military, being an entrepreneur is not usually one of the avenues they tell you when exiting. It's like, go to corporate, go back to school, go drive trucks. There's like very limited. It's not like, hey, start a business, unless you had some really good mentors, which is why I found myself in corporate. I thought that's like what the American dream was, right? You go do some white collar stuff. No, it wasn't for me. Did not fill my cup.
And now that you're back back in the fold with, past or present service members. That's awesome. Giving back to the community. I got to ask, obviously everybody's going to take the uniform off, and you transitioned already. What's some of the pros and some of the cons, if you can just hit the weight tops, if not go in depth if you want, the pros of transitioning for you and your family?
Absolutely. So I had a very unique experience. Not only was I transitioning out of the military, I was getting a divorce and I was becoming a single mom. So I had to think really quick. The big reason why I got out, all that happened at once, mind you. So I'm exiting. I'm having to figure out divorce stuff. We just weren't working out. Nothing crazy. I'm just a typical military story, right? We got married really young, had a kid really young, and here we are. So I absolutely love being a mom. So I just want to put that out there. My son is everything to me. I did what was, in my mind, the best thing for us. And I was like, that's stability. I need to find something that's going to put me in one location. I'm not going to be like, sent overseas, and he's going to be growing up without, essentially any parents. So got out. That transition was really hard. So my biggest thing was planning. I had to look and weed through different recruiters. Some of them don't put you where you're best fit or what's best for you. They just put you somewhere because they get a cut of that. When they send you somewhere, they get a cut for like the first year you're usually working somewhere. So just keep that in mind, that not all places are equal. The other things that I wish I had known or cared about more during my transition was like disability benefits. Like, get that stuff started, get yourself enrolled in VA healthcare if you can, like look into that, invest if there's like those opportunities in service to be investing. And really, again, have a plan and go through everything, because I was in such a rush, and I work well under pressure. I work probably better under pressure. Like, I knew I had to find a job, find a house, find daycare, all these different things. Boom, 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 got those done. And then I let all this other stuff, oh, that's not really important. Disability benefits, didn't even think about that till years later. Get this stuff started now, because you're going to start hurting and paying civilians to fix your problems. Investing and having a real plan that's going to be better for your future. Like me entering corporate America taught me a lot. I don't regret it, but I stayed there a couple years too long. I could have been doing stuff like this earlier, before I was like in my 30s. So I would just recommend really planning out what you want to do, because you have a long transition period. Utilize that, talk to people, build your network and figure out what's going to bring you joy. Because I've realized too that dollars are great. We need it. I love them. I love having money, but at the same time, I like having happiness and actually living my life on my terms. And no one can take this feeling of having some freedom, real freedom, away from me. That's an incredible feeling.
Absolutely. That's a kind of pros and cons at the same time.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like you wanted to be a mom, you wanted to, take life by the reins and kind of control it yourself. Cause, I've heard that the military is kind of like a second parent. They tell you where to go, tell you what to do. You can't what you can wear, blah, 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 the semantics.
Not a 9 to 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, it sounds good. It put pros and cons. I appreciate that. And, planning is a big one. Marines and service members across the board that I don't think they prepare to get out, right? They focus on the job, they focus on the mission, and we're mission or task oriented, and that's great. That's good because it's very that intangible thing is lucrative out in the civilian world because you're not going to get that, right? And that's something that you took away from it. So, but we gotta transition. We all get out eventually. So if you plan to get out and plan it right, like you said, planning, I think we'll be more successful as individuals. We have less friction in terms of finding purpose because a lot of us transition out and we lose purpose, and then the mental health things, which we're going to touch a little bit later, but the mental health things start to kick in, family starts to kick in, and just all these things that don't need to be happening if we planned correctly. So thank you for that, Alyssa. A good tidbit, nice little 40-second reel that we're going to populate here eventually. But Warrior Rising veteran, those are big deals. We all transition. You have the pros and cons. You're doing Warrior Rising, big things, and now let's talk about the while you were in the piece of bar you in. There's a lot of things that were the catalyst for transition. Obviously, one was family was a big one for you. Was there some things that you could in sphere of influence where you were stationed at, some things you could have changed, done differently in terms of transition?
So, I explored a lot of different avenues. I explored even staying in, but once you pin captain, as I'm sure it's across the board with all different, what's it called? Whether it's Marine, Army, Air Force, usually you owe time, right? Like time is what we're charged for any school we go to or any move that we make. You owe time to the government. And I just had to weigh if that was, so I looked at continuing artillery. I was what they call a branch detail. I don't know if you have these, but in the Army, basically you do your lieutenant years as, I would have done it as artillery. And then once I pinned captain, I would go into military intelligence because they didn't need lieutenants in MI. They needed captains in MI. So not only would I have to go to a schoolhouse for however many months as a captain, I would be bringing a 1-year-old at the time. And it would be in a branch that I knew nothing about because all my experience had been on the ground doing artillery for, light infantry units. So very different world. So I had to weigh all these different things. I wanted to stay in. I wasn't ready, right? None of us are usually ready to get out. So I really thought hard about staying and if that time was going to be worth it. But I was like, God forbid I get sent off and here I'm in that position with, my son, or like, am I just going to have enough time to give to him? So I really wouldn't have done anything different except for like what I mentioned earlier, really lean into your disability stuff, understand healthcare, and because everything's taken care of in the military, right? Like you just know what you're getting paid. Things are taken out. You can go to the doctor. You're not paying all these crazy co-pays unless it's something, extravagant. Just really think about it's a completely different world on the other side where you need to think about insurance. You need to think about, am I getting a house? Am I staying here for a long time? I really wish I thought hard about that because I'm in Texas where I have no family. My whole family's in New York. Still here for 5 years, but that's what I chose. I chose to go against the grain and I can do this type attitude. But if you're not that type of person, really think about where you're going to locate all these different things. I didn't get too in the weeds and now I'm here, right? And I have the ability now to move wherever I want, but I didn't for the last 5 years. So
that's fair. That's good. That's good gouge. I appreciate that, Alyssa. There's everybody gets tangible and intangible things that when in service, and we'll talk. I think we're going a little bit all over the place, and that's great because I'm learning. we have some advantages as service members transition into a civilian sector. What are some of the things that you learned in the military that are super helpful now, and just excelling you and moving forward with you and your family, your career, and all those things?
So being able to perform under pressure is one. As a young lieutenant, I was responsible for like millions of dollars worth of equipment. I was like, what? I haven't even seen $1 million in my life. And now I'm
Hmm.
responsible for men, people, the beans and bullets and all this stuff. So being able to perform under pressure, get something done, again, when there's not task and purpose, even in this world, I get frustrated. So it's good to be able to be task and purpose oriented, but to kind of be, I guess, a little loose in how other people do things. Another thing is that in the military, what's so amazing about it is it's a melting pot. So you literally are with people at a unit from all backgrounds, right? Poor, rich, this color, that color, from here, from there. So many different backgrounds that you are exposed to different lifestyles. Like when I was in the executive officers to the commander at my last unit, I had to deal with so many soldier issues that, I mean, I really felt for, people with issues with not knowing how to budget and they were in the red all the time. Issues with, home life, domestic abuse, all drug problems, all kinds of things that you become more experienced faster because you don't have a choice but to get in, your soldiers or your NCOs or whoever it is and figure out like, how do I help these people? How do I, impart wisdom, or what can I do to whatever it is. But that was a big one for me, is because I think some people just never leave where they're from, right? And if you're not in the military, you don't get exposed to a lot of different
Mm.
types of
Yeah.
people. So that's really helped with communication with different types of people. It's helped with even in the corporate world, with sales, because it's like you have to be able to talk to different kinds of people and what speaks to them. For people to feel heard is more important, because people like to talk about themselves. That's why I love podcasts, right? We get to talk a little bit about ourselves. At the end of the day, that's what people like to do. We want to feel important. So a lot of those skills I've taken with me. Mental toughness. There are points in the military where you're like, I didn't think I could do that. Whether it's physical training or if you're in combat or whatever it is, you perform differently because you're put into different stressful situations that you have to perform or people could get hurt. So I think there's
Right.
a lot of that toughness there that some people don't ever taste in their life.
Mm.
What it's like to be on that line of like, what's my potential and what's my perceived potential. I think it's like here, but then, wow, I performed here. I guess there's more to me than I thought.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
those would probably be my tops.
That's good. That's good gouge. I would say that, we'll talk about it here shortly. And I sent you a scheme of maneuver, but we're just going to go. It sounds like we're
Yeah.
just hitting it and we're kind of going on. And this is great because it's great information for everybody that's listening. People in general, we talked about the tangible and intangible that we move into civilian sector. But some of us that are still in service, and some young individuals, right? Some young Marines, young service members, they think that the military is a crutch and they do everything for you. So when you get out, your transition is horrible. I don't think that way. I think that because we didn't plan appropriately or we didn't take advantage of the opportunities, that is why they think that way. But let's talk about if the military for you kind of enclosed you in a box. Remember, you talked about not paying co-pays, not paying medical, not doing this, not doing that. You get allowance for housing wherever you go. And so those are some of the types of crutches that they're talking about. Is there something specific that you can hit the nail on the head in terms of, hey, this is probably that, gave me a crutch moving into the civilian sector?
Gosh, a crutch for me. Well, it was more like recently realizing if you leave corporate to a nonprofit, there's no benefits. So
Okay.
having to figure out like, oh, I guess I do have to use the VA until I figure something else out.
Mm.
Because if you don't use the VA, you don't get your certain benefits anyways. So there's a lot of
Ah.
things like that. But as far as like a crutch, I think there has, and this is going to be some tough love for you guys, but I'm a very tough love person, is there's got to be a time when you start taking responsibility for your life.
Ooh.
It's that's the end of the day. There's going to be some hard things. There's going to be some big changes, but you got to, put your big boy or big girl pants on and kind of handle it and know that there's resources. There are people who have transitioned successfully. Meet those people, talk to those people,
Yeah.
go to different websites. I mean, there's VA websites, but there's also these awesome nonprofits that I didn't even know existed. There's so many nonprofits for veterans. If you need to find a tribe and community, I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent, or if you just need to find out how to transition, we literally talk about transition. So do a bunch of other nonprofits. We want veterans to succeed outside of the military. So do your research. If you don't have a computer, if that's your excuse, go to a library, borrow a friend's. There is literally no excuse. You have to take responsibility.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think the military is a crutch. I don't think anything they do is a crutch. I think it's a benefit to the individual member
Yeah.
to complete the mission. And that's just my opinion. There's no way that where, there's a crutch, like, oh, they do everything for you. They give you a house and room and board. I'm like, what are you complaining about? That's not a crutch. That's a great benefit, right? Meals, and then where you can stay at, right? And then
Free hot
when
meals
you're
and a cot.
yeah, and then when you're seasoned enough, you can go live off the local economy, and then you can be an adult. Like, I don't know what's so crutch about that. You know what I mean? So that's good.
No.
That's good. Take responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. It's your career. It's your decision making. It all comes back to choices, and choices that they don't take accountable for. And nowadays, in my opinion, right? We could talk about that later, but that's good. Some of the pros, some of the cons of transition to military service. It's a little different now with this generation, though. You gotta really peel the onion back, so to speak. What's the disconnect in terms of young individuals joining the military? I hear a lot of the time that it's a last resort. Why should it be the first?
Oh, like to join
Why shouldn't
or
it be
to
the first? Yeah.
For me, it was a first. I wanted to join. I've seen, okay, so I don't know if this is a tangent or if this kind of goes along, but I'd seen in the age of social media. So social media did not really exist at the level it does now when I was younger. I didn't even have a cell phone until I was like 17 or 18. So like this is new, even though I'm in the world of it. But I had seen a video recently about I think it was females, but they were in whatever branch they were in. I don't remember. And they're like, why did you join the military? And they were asking around, which could have been a really cool video, except every answer was just blasphemous. It was just like, for the girls, for the boys, so my mom could become a citizen because of this, X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, that should not be. So when I think of like a last resort, I'm thinking people do it for other reasons. I had a feeling towards service. I always loved history. My dad had served. I'm the only one of his daughters. There's 4 of us that served. For me, I felt there was a calling. It's been the biggest foundation for me. I enjoyed my service. I'm proud of my service. So for me, it was a first choice. Anyone else, I'm like, gosh, like, I don't know. I feel like you'd have to have some kind of patriotism. There's no checklist, right, for that. Like, do you like being, a selfless servant leader, or are you just doing it for other reasons? Which I know there's a mix of both. There always will be. You can't weed them out. They're not going to tell you that. But yeah, that's an interesting question that I haven't really thought about. But I'd seen that video and I was like, what?
I think everybody's decision is important to come in because but in terms of you got kids that want to go to college, and you got kids that want to go to college and then they think about service. If the college don't work out, then I'll join. Debt, college fees, this, that, and the other. Might as well just go to school because you get school for free when you join. Tuition assistance, right? That's the kind of the point I'm talking about is this generation doesn't have the selfless service, so to speak. You got to buy them in with individual traits or individual me type of thing. Do you think that's a negative, or do you think it's a pro?
That's kind of a double-edged sword in my opinion, because I think, if you can, I don't know the word I'm looking for, that positive reinforcement, if that's what's needed, okay, but then you better be willing to realize it's hard work. You're not just going to be on like sick call all the time, and you're not just, and I know there's stipulations for things. There's years, again, we give time. Time is the value here in the military. But I mean, most of me would just want to be like, no, that's horrible. Like we shouldn't be giving them all these things. But then I'm like, our retention is pretty low as far as I'm aware. So maybe they need to go to those courses. But it's like, are you willing to go overseas and die in the name of our country? Because that's ultimately what you raised your hand to do, right? If it comes to it, I want to protect the people back home, so I'm willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice. So that's something you'd have to answer within yourself, because you might be put into a situation. So if that positive reinforcement of free school is worth that outcome, that possible outcome, then sure, it's a great thing to do.
I don't know if we should start off that way. Hey, do you want to die for your country? Let me go to the other office.
You just have to be aware that that's a real possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Nah, I'll just pay for school.
I'll just go to college. Don't worry about it. You'll pay it later with the forgiveness program.
Yeah,
no worries. You're fine. What we got to talk about, that leads me to my next point. We'll hit it here. I know your time is precious, so I appreciate you coming on and taking the time out of your busy schedule. But I got to ask, the country is divided, right? The country is divided. For some odd reason, we can't collectively think together or disagree on certain points and then move forward. There's no way forward for them. How do you tackle that issue? Is that relative where you're at? Is that something that you experience day to day, disagreements and no way forward, or do you have progress in disagreement?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. A great question though. So I see that it's divided. Everyone with two eyeballs can see it. I think a lot of it comes to, again, we're in this space where and I don't want to get too political on here, but everything, news, social media, everything that's out there can be conflicting. It can be only half a story. We don't truly know everything. Maybe we're being distracted from something. I don't know. So my biggest thing is they say it takes one person to change the world. It takes a bunch of one people everywhere spreading awareness, joining together, just understand that not everyone has a problem. It's put out that way, I think, that there's all this divide. And even in the corporate world or any world you're in, it's diversity, inclusion, it's being shoved down everyone's throat. And some of us are just like, I don't have a problem with any of this stuff. Like, aren't we
Hmm.
already doing this? So I'm seeing it as a trend that it's like maybe there are people that don't, and that's their, whatever, that's their prerogative. But the divide is not something that's going to be easily, it's not just like a solvable, like here's the answer to it. It's going to take different generations coming in, different individual people coming together and speaking about, our common ground. And it would take massive shifts in the, media space, big
Hmm.
tech, all that stuff to really, because they're the ones pushing out the information. So
True.
whoever owns that is the one who owns the floor on what the people perceive and think. So again,
That's
without getting
good.
political, that's just my thought.
That's good. No, that's good. That's a good gouge because you got young, impressionable service members, and that's the
Hmm.
majority of our core, right? For us, and I'm sure it's the Army, Navy, Air Force. It's the same deal. 85s and below make up the majority, and those are young adults. Those are 18 to 22-year-old adults. How do that information you just gave them, with that information you just gave them, excuse me, related back to the service member now, hey, man, I got these conflicting thoughts. What do I do with these thoughts in terms of the political divide or, disagreements that don't lead to progress? How do we tackle that as service members? And I know we have left and right lateral limits. I get it. But personally, relatably, as an officer, as a leader, as a senior enlisted, how do we tackle those issues?
Well, I would say actions. Your actions are going to speak louder than the things you say. People will say whatever they want. Doesn't mean it holds any, carries any water. So your actions are going to prove that as a leader or I mean, a leader of a small group, a leader of a big group, showing through action that you are someone looking for progress, that is inclusive, that is whatever word you want to use. That's what's going to help them do that. But also just service members in general, do your own research, talk to people about it. If you have these conflicting thoughts in your head, go to someone that you trust, that you can have an open conversation with and be like, hey, like I'm noticing this, like whether it's within your ranks or just outside in the world and you're just curious, have a conversation, like learn more, learn everything you can, but don't believe everything you see right away because people will
Hmm.
show you before they tell you.
That's good.
So,
That's it. You show it's the new age kind of information. If I can see it, I believe it. But if I don't read it, then I'm good. Don't ask me to read it because I probably won't read it later. I think that's the age now, right? Oh, I see
yeah,
it. They're giving me the information, but I'm not actually reading
yeah,
the article or this, the information entirely. So read it.
yeah.
I mean, that's good gouge
Mhm.
too. I appreciate that. As a leader, I think we should have healthy discourse and we should have open-ended conversations for the young adults, right? The ones that are subordinate to you and that you're supposed to lead. I think that if you're more relatable in that way, I think that it shows who you are, but it doesn't disrupt good order and discipline. Those are double-edged swords, right? So
Yep.
obviously tread carefully. There's always
Yeah,
policy for some reason.
there is
Um,
always.
yeah, look, we love policy. A Warrior Rising, giving back to the veteran community. You're doing big, great things for you and your family. You're moving. You're doing big things with Warrior Rising. How does one get involved at this application process with Warrior Rising? How does that one get involved with that?
So any veteran can apply on our website, which is just warriorrising.org. And there's a vetrepreneur is what we call it. So a veteran entrepreneur is a vetrepreneur. There's a little tab at the top, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'm happy to send a link. But all you do is fill it out, ask you about your service, your name, and you're into their online coursing. You get training as soon as you sign up. So the training, it's up to you to do it. It's at your own pace, all online. They're developing an app that should be coming out hopefully within next year. But all the training is free for veterans. And the thing is, if you want to compete for a business shower, is what we call it. It's a big gala. They're a ton of fun. There's great raffles, auctions, everything's obviously, there's donations, there's incredible people. If you want to actually compete for a business grant, that's a different process, but you have to have completed Warrior Academy, which is absolutely free to all veterans. It's really just up to you to finish it at your own pace. However fast or slow that is up to you. But whether you have just an idea of a business, you're in the middle of it, you've already started it, it can be helpful to you. There's a lot of different courses they'll have too, like workshops with, Wells Fargo will come on, or, someone from different financial institutes, or how to get grants, business grants, government contracting, government contracts. They have all kinds of classes that are free for veterans. You just have to sign up and get through the course, but we're here to help. And it's just a different avenue for veterans. If you are of entrepreneurial spirit, have a business idea, want to launch it, have already launched it. That's what's really awesome, is it's just another path that you can take towards, owning your life and earning your future, so to speak. So it's pretty cool.
I feel not included. What about active duty service members?
I believe they can too. It's military spouses, the children, any, if you're even related to, the veteran. But I think active duty is also, you're cool with it. So you just got to sign up. That's it. It's simple. You don't have to pay. It's like,
no, I want to. It's always good to get better. Knowledge is power.
It is.
Up here is where all the power is at least as far as retaining knowledge, right? So that's good. I'm gonna check it out. WarriorRising.org. You said.
Org. Yep.
Yep. How hard was it to get affiliated with the veteran community and doing that piece in terms of a nonprofit?
So again, it came down to networking. I don't think I would have been afforded. I happen to know a few people within the organization without knowing the connections would come later. So I had met one because I was going through a 3-letter agency originally when I got out. I was like, I kind of want to do this. I don't like corporate. And I was connected from a mutual friend to this other person who happened to work for Warrior Rising. And then I had met Ben, like I said, who used to do the marketing. Now I do that so he can do higher level things as well. Had just known them for a couple of years. I think what you don't see is like they're watching everything you do, right? Like, so if you're connected on a social media account and you're professional, you know what you're doing, like that's what they were looking for, was someone to do exactly what I was already doing. But again, it comes to like networking and realizing what you do, what skills do you bring to the table. I was not a social media person at all until, I just decided to start one. So whether it's that, or whether it's you're good with a camera, or you good with, finances, bookkeeping, like whatever it is that brings you passion and happiness and cash, like you should probably follow that. But yeah, it came down to a network. So
is it hard for Warrior Rising as an organization to work with the veteran community, or is it kind of just free game, or is there's like stipulations you got to meet step by step?
Do you mean like to get chosen for like the business showers? Or
no, so just in general, as the organization itself, Warrior Rising. I know I'm working with QRF Up, right? It's an app. It's an organization for suicide prevention, and they're in the weeds with DAV, all these nonprofits for veterans, and they want to come back and work with the VA in terms of transitioning service members. Are you kind of in that loop too, as Warrior Rising as an organization, or no?
So we're in some different loops with like different business channels for like veterans, like going, I know who you're talking like with DAV and all these other people. So depending on what and they kind of do some similar things as well. So no, we're always looking for people to like partner with. Obviously we are a nonprofit, so figuring those things out, but it's not hard to get with it. It's a conversation. And if we can find a place to either help, collaborate, support in some kind of way, it's not a difficult ask. It's a smaller team that actually manages different verticals within the organization, but it's there's always conversations and meetings willing to be had. So
nice.
There's an opportunity.
I've heard in the through the grapevine it's hard to get affiliated or create a nonprofit that serves the veteran community. There's just too many friction points. But it sounds like you guys are doing a great job, to be honest.
Jason Van Camp is the founder. He's awesome.
What's that?
So Jason Van Camp, the founder, founded it in 2015, and I'm sure it was a little bit of a crazy to start up, but he's a keynote speaker now and all these other things. So I mean, that'd be a great question for me to ask him one day. Like, getting started, what hassles did you face?
I seen you on LinkedIn that you mentioned before. I was like, Warrior Rising, what is that? And I wonder what they do. And I kind of just researched myself, looked it up. I was like, shoot, giving back to the veteran community. That's what it's about, right? Because there's active duty service members, past or present, 6 million. That's a big pool to start swimming for fish for, right? That's a lot. It's a lot of people. There's obviously a lot of help out there at different organizations. I've heard of them, read of them, seen them all, most of them. So I appreciate you giving back to the veteran community that way. It just goes to show you that, yeah, you transition, yeah, you have a calling, but you know, it's way more fulfilling to be selfless and serve others, and that's what you're doing now. So I do appreciate that. The last tidbit, I know your time's precious, but we always got to hit purpose and mental health and suicide prevention, right? Because it's 22 to 44 now. You know, the numbers change daily, the numbers change yearly. I get it, and it's different. It goes in waves, and we're never going to prevent it. I get it, I do. But a lot of us, it hits home. We lose purpose, we transition, and a lot of the times it happens after we get out. Not necessarily while we're in. And, that rare occasion when it does happen, we're in. But as I read, a lot of the time it's when we get out. How do we prepare ourselves mentally and prevent us from, taking our lives, suicide, because we lose purpose or we forget to plan or things like that? Provide some insight there for those young service members, those transitioning service members that are potentially going to cross that road here soon, or the ones that are in it now.
Yeah, so a big thing, it would be finding your tribe or your community. So who to stay connected with, people that can help you, that can hear you and see you. That's important to know that if you're listening now and you've ever had these thoughts cross your mind, that you are seen and you are valued, and any sacrifice you've made and the time you've put in will not go forgotten. Just for me, my biggest outlet has always been fitness. So I'm constantly working out. I just recently added jujitsu to the mix of like lifting and running and all this stuff. So I'm like, keeping active for me is what releases the endorphins, right? That's what keeps me sharp of mind, but also knowing like I can keep going. The fact that I'm doing all the things I'm doing now is because I believe firmly if your health and wellness is up there and you prioritize it, a lot of other doors start opening because you have that presence, but also you just know that you're capable, you're disciplined, right? Because you can wake up and go work out even on the days you don't want to. So to me, it takes that discipline. Reading books, I like to read only nonfiction, like either self-help or those kinds of books. And finding a tribe, like I said in the beginning, really having people to talk to, because that transition will be hard, whether it's your family, your friends, or someone not in that circle at all. Having someone to talk to about different, whatever it is that you can be open with about your concerns. There are services. There are tons of nonprofits, like I said in the beginning, too. The fitness ones, there's, mental health ones, things that are free to veterans if there's any issues transitioning, or if you've already transitioned and you're having some thoughts. There are so many things that are not just through the VA, because I know some people are really hesitant about going through the VA. If you're one of those, there are other nonprofits there to help you that aren't going to charge you to seek the help that you need or advancement or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily, but mental health for me, as I was going through all those things at once with a divorce, with a kid, like the kid situation, everything, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with all this? I had to make sure I had a support network there, that I had people to lean on when I needed it most, and that I was still going to find a way to pour into my cup. I had to figure out creative ways to work out, because then COVID hit as soon as I was out. So then you realize all the gyms closed, and now I'm like, oh my God. So there's always going to be something that happens, right? We have to be able to adjust fire. We have to be able to adapt. So that supportive network, read some books, take care of your health and wellness when you get out, because you're not going to be told to do PT anymore, but it's okay. It's good to keep that, if you're going to keep one habit from the Army, it's that discipline to show up for yourself and live long and healthy and all that good stuff. So I hope that helps.
That's good. No, for me it does, right? You gotta get up. Every day's a hill. You gotta attack it, whether it's mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all those avenues. Every day's a hill. And every day you should be a little bit better than yesterday, whether it's service member, whether it's being a father, a husband, whatever brother, sister, whatever it is that you are, whatever title you have, you just got to be a little bit better. And how do you do that? Well, for you, it's mental. It's staying physically fit, because it's not only you that's looking up to you, it's your son. Right, son? You said son?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yep.
so it's, you got some, sure, you have some different obligations, but, people are always looking up to you.
Absolutely.
Take that, ladies and gentlemen. If you just tuning in, we got Alyssa Michelle from Warrior Rising. Thank you for taking the time. The floor is yours. Any last rounds? Any save rounds you got? That you got 30 a minute. You got 15. However long you want to take. The floor is yours. Hit it and quit it, and then we'll get on.
Awesome. Well, no, I just really appreciate it, and I absolutely will always have a soft spot for veterans and any service members. So if there's anything I can do, I like to connect. LinkedIn is a great place because I can connect you that way. I have an awesome network, but also just if there's any questions or anything follow up, like you can follow me at Alyssa Michelle. So that's great. Or on any other social media, it's Little Fit Patriot. That's my little handle. But always happy to help and jump on any podcast because I absolutely love telling stories. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize the importance of that transition and how we need to control our lives, right? Like we need to be in control. Yeah, that's all I got to say because I can ramble on forever.
Thanks, Alyssa. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're doing bigger, greater things for the community. Hey, stay up. I appreciate it. Live free. Be a patriot. Awesome. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with your host, Gunny G and Alyssa Michelle from Warrior Rising. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcast on all social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism, ladies and gentlemen. We out.
Stand by, contact. Ceasefire. Stand by, contact. Ceasefire.
Pit Talk is a podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.